All right then, do we have sound? Do we have lights? Do we have stuff out here? Action? There's no action. I'm too old for that. I'm Dan Doster. I'm an old opera singer, and the hardest thing for me to do with this demonstration is that really I don't do this kind of stuff. I mean, I stand in front of people and I sing and stuff like that, but I have a composer who gives me the words, and or the lyricist gives me the words, the composer gives me the music to sing, and then I have a conductor that tells me when to sing and how to sing and that sort of stuff. I've got a director that says go over here or go over there or do something like that, and I've got people that are in the other parts of the opera that will do things, and now I'm up here trying to tell you what I do, and so it's a little disconcerting to make that happen. I'm going to talk about making cars and trucks. I've got an example here. These are the little cars that I make, and this is a truck that I found in cherry log. There's a wonderful preacher called Fred Craddock that we used to listen to a lot, would go see his sermons, and he developed the Craddock Center in Cherry Log, and the Craddock Center does wonderful things for children in Appalachia. The kids are pretty much indigent, and they don't have any books to read and things like that, so years and years and years ago, they started giving out books to children in the elementary school, and they give out 3,000 books a year. And it was a wonderful ministry, and so Becky and I loved it a lot. And oh, you've been introduced. You want me to introduce you again?
Well, I'd just like to say that that's true about opera, but that's why he married me, is because I just tell him when to do all those kinds of things. You're his director.
Yes.
Yes, for 49 years.
49 years of it, yeah. And
Sure are.
more than you know, more than you know. So anyway, the Craddock Center is a wonderful place where they do wonderful things for children, and they've been doing it for years, and it blessed our hearts that they were doing that. And they would have about once a year they get together for a donators meeting, and Fred McCutcheon would get up and sing for about an hour and just have a wonderful time. And one time when I went there, I saw a truck about like this, and I said, "You got that?" Or no, I can leave it there. Okay, a truck like that, and I said, "Well, I could make that. That's what I could do. I could go home and make that." And so I bought the truck, and I said, "Well, I came home and I made a design for it, and I started making these. The first year I made about 50 of them because I had some 8-quarter oak left over for some projects, and I said, well, I'll just use that. And so I did those, and then a couple of years later I started on the cars, which I'll talk about later on. But we did all of that. Let's see what my notes say here. All right. The fun part of it was I really had for about 10 or 12 years, I had an electrical services company, and I rented out of my basement, which was originally my shop. And as time went on and on and on, all of the space in the basement was filled up with electrical equipment or fuse boxes, this, that, and the other. And so I had no room to work in my own workshop. So on my table saw itself, I had an area about this big, about that big. And that's all the room I had to work in my shop. I could get to my bandsaw, I could get to my drill press and the sander, but all the assembly and everything else kept a little place like that. So at first, I'd do 3 or 4 at a time, and that seemed to work out, and it gave me room to put the finish on them and everything else. But then I retired, and then all the stuff went away, and now I've got my shop, so I can go around and work at my various stages and get things done. Let me talk about sourcing out the wood for this. I go to Home Depot and I buy 8-foot pieces of 2x4. All right, so anyway, I go to Home Depot and I'm trying to find wood for these things. I get an 8-foot 2x4, and of course, if you've ever gone to Home Depot, I won't ask for a show of hands. If you've ever gone to Home Depot, you know you got to go through about 15 or 20 2x4s before you get something that looks like a 2x4 and doesn't bend and bow and well, I shouldn't do that. But it has all kinds of, see, that Becky says this is it, a live audience I can do. You cannot imagine.
We call that, woodworkers call that propeller wood.
Yes, 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 yes. So anyway, I cut these off. Let me just go over here and turn the page, because if I don't turn the page, I won't know what I'm doing. I cut these things off about 11 7/8. Now, I don't write 11 7/8 on the piece of wood. I just have that there to remind me of what I'm supposed to say. But I cut them off about 11 7/8, so that gives me about 8 pieces per 8-foot 2x4, and that works out really well. When I got the truck, I decided I'd make a pattern, so I made a pattern for the truck that doesn't look anything like this, because I've changed the pattern a dozen times since then. But in making the pattern, I needed to have a way to duplicate my work time after time after time, and I finally got me a piece of what is this, 1/8" plywood, and I made a little pattern. So what I do is I take my little Sharpie here. This? See, I have a director. That's the wonderful thing. Right. So, and I just take this and I make little marks on it and have a good time. I'll tell you about the marks on it. I've got a hole here for the cab, and then I've got holes for the wheels. So I have to put a mark here, and I'll tilt this up in a second. A mark there for that. I've got to put a little hole right there, a little hole right there, a little hole right there, and a little hole right there. All right. So now I've got everything. Oops. Sorry, got to do 2 more marks. So there's all the marks that I need for my project. I'm already done with all the marking I'll ever need to do with this, and it's just real quick and easy, and I just am a real fan of patterns for that. Now, what I'm going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm going to walk around to the drill press, because we actually have one right here, and I'm going to talk about the holes that I'm going to drill for this. When I first started drilling the holes for the wheels, I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never made a toy. I didn't know anything about it. So I drilled on this side and this side and this side and this side. I turned it around and I drilled over here and over here and over here and over here. Well, they didn't line up. And so when you start to push it, it kind of goes like that. It was kind of goofy. And so I said, well, what if I just drilled all the way through? Turn that on. Please don't try this at home, unless you have eye coverings. But the holes that I drilled, when I finally got to that point, then I used an axle that went through, and I don't have a piece of the axle with me because I didn't have one at the house. But the axle went through, and I glued it to these little wheels. And then it would go round and round and round and round. I'd stick the axle, I'd put some glue here, and I'd stick the axle in, and then put it onto put it there. But I'm going to get ahead of myself. Let me not do that. Yeah, okay. So you got the hole there. Then you can go back and drill the hole for the cab. You have a little cab hole there, and it looks a lot like the cab hole that's right there. And the thing is, I thought about putting a head in there. I thought about putting a driver, but then I said I didn't know if I could make it be so it wouldn't go away and be a choke hazard. So I decided against doing that. So, but if you decide you want to put a head in there, just be sure that you put it in there so that it doesn't become a choke hazard for a child. Let's see. I'm going to take this now to the bandsaw. Okay. All right. You there? Yeah. Blade's too thick. Can't make a turn. Anyway, what you want to do is you want to make this turn here and come down and make that turn. The blade's just too, I need an 1/8" blade. And we talked about doing that, and I didn't make the change, my bad. But anyway, you make the cut, and you'll come up with something that looks, oddly enough, about like that. And then you've already got drilled the cab, you've got the axles all drilled. So that's 5 out of 7. Then we have a problem. Okay, to make the kingpin, you've got to make a line down the middle of this little place right here so that you can make the hole for the kingpin. Well, what I thought I'd do is I would buy me a jig that would make that happen. Really, really impressive. It's made out of steel. It's got little wingy things and things like that. But when you put it on here, by the time you get to where you need to have the thing to work here, it doesn't work. It just doesn't fit. So you can't make it. You can't make a straight line. So I did that for a while, but I tried using a measuring thing of some sort, all kinds of different things. Just happened to have this square that I bought later on. But having to try to get it to fit in the right place and make the exact measurement and do it a number of times, it was just time consuming and really not accurate. And so sometimes I'd come up with holes that were off a 1/4 of an inch, and I'd have to use our friend and fill them up and then go re-drill them again. The second time I got something, let's see, where am I? Here, yeah. The second thing I actually made this one. The problem is, it's upside down. Problem is that when you have it where it should be, the pencil should be, it just weebles and wobbles around. And if you get it where the pencil's in a good place, it's hard to use. So I didn't use that. The third thing I used was this. I bought this offline. Of course, you buy everything from Amazon, they'll send it to you. It's no big deal. It didn't work either. And then I thought about it, and I said, if I just added a couple of dowels, that will decrease the space that I've got to have, because this angle is the problem. With this angle, I can't get the piece to go. On the flat side, where's the other half of this thing? On the flat, there's just not a way to make that work until I added the dowels there, and now it makes a perfect line every time. And I could do the 44 that I'm working on right now. I did all 44 of them in about 10 minutes, and I went, gee, if I just had that 3 years ago. All right, where are we now? What? It's not supposed to be up there. Sorry. You can do what you can, but you can't get an old entertainer to not just do silly stuff occasionally. When you take this to the sander, all right, sander's a fun place to go. I'm going to not turn the sander on because it'll just make a mess. I'm trying to do as little mess making as I can. But with this, you can do all the edges and get all the flat places around to be smooth, and you can get rid of the extra stuff that Home Depot leaves for you, and you can take all your pencil marks off and that sort of thing. And it makes it really nice and smooth, and you come up with something that looks a lot like this. And all the marks and everything is ready to go. The problem with sanding is that your fingers are really close to where the sanding belt is. And if you've got a little piece like this and you're going like this, you can see what my knuckles do. Anybody ever hit your knuckle on a belt? Ah, there's recognition. You're right in their way. You know that I should be standing. I can't do that. All right, so the thing that I do is I have a supply in my shop, so I'm ready to go anytime I do that. And I put it on my knuckle, and you know how Band-Aids are on the knuckle. They just don't work really well. And you wear them for about a day and a half, you wash your hands and they fall off, and you got this fresh wound there, and you go to do something else, and you bang your finger on something, and it's just annoying as all get out. But that's what you do with the sander. What the other thing?
And
Yes, sir.
those who have one, I would suggest a spindle sander.
Oh yes, well, I do have a spindle sander also.
Yeah, that works much better on something like that.
Well, it does on the car, which I'll get to, but a spindle sander, I have to take off a lot of stock, and so a spindle sander will take a long time to do that, where the belt sander will really knock it off.
Yeah, but I mean, the curves are a lot easier to do.
Actually, I agree with you on that in principle. The only thing is, the curve here is just about exactly what's there.
Okay.
You know, so it works out. It worked out really well that I had that. We didn't get to this point. Oh, have to go back. If you've got a bandsaw, what's really important is that you really want to see that the plate itself is perpendicular to the bandsaw itself, and look how perfect that is. Isn't that pretty? Well, it's really, is it this way too, I wonder? Actually, that's pretty close. But it's not perfect, but it's pretty close. And then this is really just this spot dead on. Well, when you're making a bunch of these, what will happen is that you'll realize that something's wrong because you're sanding a lot. You're sanding a lot in this area right along here, and in this area right along here on both of them. And you sit at your desk and you're looking at your bandsaw, and you say to your bandsaw, why do you not look perpendicular? Why is that? And so I did. I went over to the bandsaw and I looked at it, and it was off about like that. So I had to sand off a whole bunch of stuff. I had to sand off a whole bunch of stuff just to get down to where I was rounded off and smooth, so then I could go on from there. Where am I now? Oh, I've got a dust collector. It grabs up all the dust when I'm sanding. I've got a house fan that pulls air out of the shop to also take care of stuff. I've got the sander going, and then I've got a compressor going so I can blow off things as I'm going along. So needless to say, I got a lot of stuff going on in the shop, a lot of noise going on in the shop. So ear protectors. My wife convinced me after about 3 years that I really should use a face mask when I'm sanding. And I said, well, that'd be a great idea. So I quit coughing after I sanded all day. It was a marvelous thing. Yeah. All right, so where's my rasp? Here's my rasp. All right. When I was drilling, using that very drill bit, I would come up with a problem with the bit doing exactly like this. I would have a little tear out. And when I got to this point, I found that I could use this little bitty rasp to go in and clean out that tear off really nicely so that my axles would fit in there. Doesn't seem like that's a big point, but it makes it nicer for you as you're going along that you'd have a little rasp. Now, I had this rasp in my shop. I had bought a set of 18 rasps in a folded thing. I had bought 18 rasps for some reason. I have no idea why I bought 18 rasps at one point in time. But in that set, it had one of these. And I went, ooh, that would be perfect. And so I've used that ever since. It was a great purchase. Let me talk to you about routing. When you want to make these little squarish kind of things, the edge is nice and neat, you want to go through a router. And the one up here is a woodpecker router table, a lift table that wouldn't lift. It was really kind of annoying because I said, well, here's my fancy Dan little lift that doesn't lift. I put my little tool in there and I'd go like that. I wouldn't go like this, I'd just go like that. And it wouldn't lift. And so I said, well, I'm going to have to see if I can get this repaired. So I went to Woodcraft and I said to him, please, can you tell me if I can send this back to Woodpecker and have them do it? And the guy Steve at the countertop said, well, I had the exact same router lift, and it was about 15 years old. And so he said, and the problem was it wouldn't lift. And he called Woodpecker, so he'd already done it, and he said, it'll cost you about the same as it would for a brand new lift. It would cost you $430, or for the other one is about $460. And I went, maybe not. I can just deal with it because I can move it up with, the old-fashioned way. Well, Steve said, let me look at it for a little bit, and he said, let me get some cleaner. And so he started cleaning on it and started cleaning the lifts and this, that, and the other. And I was doing one of those router classes there on Saturday. And so I went to the router class and I sat down. About an hour later, I came back and it looked exactly like that. It's perfect as if it had just come out of the box, and it lifted up and down. And so I said, Steve, you've done a wonderful thing here. And then I wrote him about a page review on Google so they'd have that. So that's and this is the way to do this. You need a router table for better safety and things like that. What I'd used for a long time was the handheld router. And the handheld router, if you look at it, I would do it like this, but if you I do it like this, and you can see that all of a sudden I don't have any place for my hands as I'm going around and around it. It's a really hard thing to control, and it's just not optimal. When I got my router table back, and I wasn't working off my table saw anymore, I was able to do this much more safely, and it turned out to be really good. And so I got to that point, I got it routed, I got it cut, I got it drilled, I got it sanded, I got it routed, and then we did talk about the wheels. What? Oh, I'm there. Oh. It's my director. When you get to this point, you want to talk about finishing it. You need to talk about finishing it because you want to have that done before you put the wheels on. For the oak, I use tung oil, which, as I understand it, when it's dry and it's safe for play or anything else like that, you shouldn't have any problems at all. So I'd use tung oil for that. And then I tried putting tung oil on the pine. And the pine really, there's no tung oil on that, but the pine was such that you really couldn't tell that you'd put tung oil on it. It just was so blonde, and you put it on there. I said, well, that's just a waste of time. And so I put out a bunch of them just natural. And I go back and forth. Do you want to paint them? Do you want to put like a blue cab and a yellow truck or this, that, and the other? You could you spend as much time as you want to on them. I'm doing production, so I don't really have the time to do that. But if you wanted to, you could paint them or do this, that, and the other. But that's just what I do. The next thing that I talk about is the wheels and the axles. Let's see. Let me put that right there. The axle that I used originally was a through axle. I had these pins, or these axles themselves. Does that show up? Yeah. That's the little axle there. Oddly enough, that's a wheel, which we've already shown a minute ago. But I used the through dowel, which really did work well. It was simultaneous. The wheels were going in the same direction, all that sort of stuff. But then I got some axles, and I said, well, let me see if I can do this. And I had the best time trying to put the axles on there. And I'd put a little bit of glue right in the hole, and I'd be very careful with it. I used syringe and all that sort of stuff. Good afternoon, sir. Don't heckle the crowd, Dan. Don't do it. I put a little glue in there, and I put a pin in there, or put that in there, and I try to keep it off of the edge here so that it could dry, and then I put the same thing on the other side. And of course, when I put it down, I'd kind of try to make it work like this, and somehow the glue would spurt out and be really annoying. And in my third year of doing it, the first time I was making about 3 or 4, and I'd put them out like that, and they all glued themselves to the side of the truck. And I said, it's not as optimal as I thought it could be. And so I did what every true-blooded American should do. I went and looked on YouTube. There was a guy who had made a YouTube about building cars, race cars and stuff like that. Well, he got to the point where he said, okay, here's your deal here. There it is. I have to make some noise. Excuse me for a minute. Editorial comment. It's not going to work. It's not going to go fast enough. I'm so sorry. So I'm going to go back and just explain it to you, and then I'm going to go, when I go like this and I go plink, that's going to be what it's doing, but it's not actually going to do that. So anyway, here we have the cab, and I've got a wheel here, and it doesn't move very much. And so I need to get a spacer in it to get the wheel to move, get the axle pulled out just enough so that the wheel will move, but that it won't just weeble and wobble and fobble all over the place. So I said, maybe if I had a special tool, a tool just for that. An Ace Hardware 1.5 inch flexible blade putty knife. I put it just like that. And that gives me enough space for the wheel to turn. It's not going to turn right now, but the wheel to turn. And then also all I've got to do is go, this is the part where you have to use your imagination. Plink, plink, and I put that on there, pull that out, rolls like a charm. We'll do that the entire life of the unit itself. So that's what that is. That's a finished truck. Yes, sir.
Finishing nail, or is that a pin nail?
Pin nailer. Pin nailer, the pin nail looks just like that.
Is that 23 gauge?
I do not know.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah,
It's in there, and then I got the-
yeah, yeah. But that's what I use. It goes plenty deep, and it keeps everything stable, and I can sleep at night.
Dan, who do you order your wheels and axles from?
Boy, that's such a wonderful question, and something I should have put down. It's online. If anybody wants to drop me an email or a text, I can.
Bear Wood Supply.
It's again.
I think, yeah,
Bear
Bear
Wood.
Woods.
That's one. That's not the one that I use, but
There's one called Cherry something too.
yeah, I don't.
Cherry Tree or something.
Cherry Tree, yeah, I think
It
that's
wouldn't tell you
it.
there had
there was a sweet couple that had had this company that I ordered the first set from, and they were so nice about everything, and the price was about a quarter a piece, for an 1.5-inch wheel, and so in with that I've got about $2 in wheels. I've got about 50 cents in a piece of wood, and some time in my basement listening to classical music over the sounds of other things going in the thing. So anyway, that's the end of that truck. Now I have one other thing. I have grandchildren. Everybody should have grandchildren. If you don't, I'm sorry, because it's fun to have grandchildren. And I thought about my grandchildren, my little girls. My grandson had outgrown everything when I started all this. But I saw, if I quit moving that, I saw a car, and I said, I'd like to make that. And so I ordered online patterns. And they all came with wheels and all that sort of stuff. I took the wheels off, and I said, well, I didn't like this one because I couldn't make that square. It was annoying. I just wanted to make the square. I couldn't figure out a way to make that square and route it off and all that sort of stuff. And so I tried it for about 5 minutes, and I said, I don't like that. This was a little bit tough. This was a little bit tough, and I finally settled on this. And I had, as you can tell, as you know, you have to do it on a scroll saw. And I had no scroll saw skills, but worse than that, I didn't have a scroll saw. And so I went and bought a scroll saw. And then I didn't have a table for my scroll saw. I went and bought a table for the scroll saw. So I have this lovely little DeWalt scroll saw there that's 10 times better than I am as a woodworker, but I can cut out things. So what I did was I took the pattern and I traced it on a piece of wood, and I drilled holes in it for the wheels, and then a hole where the handhold is going to go, and then just take and cut it out of the pattern itself, and you end up with something like that. And it worked out really well. I made a whole bunch of them. I got the wood for it. Does anybody know what kind of wood that is? Looked like walnut? Yeah, it looked like walnut to me too. So I got these cutoffs. A guy had gone to a cabinet shop and had not bought, but had just taken his scrap, just cutoffs, a bunch of cutoffs. Well, nobody needs that for a cutoff. So you can't build a cabinet with it, you can't build a door with it. So he took those, and he had a big old box of them. And I gave him a few dollars for the box, and that's how I started making these cars. And the thing about it is I just go through and I'll plane it down, I'll get it to where it's sort of that thickness, because it's a little bit too thick for the car to be that thick, and plane it down to about this. Then that works out really well. Then I take this and I take it to the sander, and I sand the front, back, and the top and around so I get everything kind of smoothed out. This one I've not sanded. And then use this spindle sander, just like he said. Just use a spindle sander for the inside of that, and that worked out really well for that. And then go to the router table and route around the edges. And this is really the one that's the hard one if you're doing it on the handheld router, because your fingers are really close to everything no matter what you do. So it's better to do it on the router table because you got just better control. Because if you're trying to do this with this, there's no way I can get a picture. You can see I don't have any place for my fingers at all. And it's just not a good thing. And I'm trying to do this and do that and go around. And I only made about 150 of them before I got my router table up and running. So that's a much better thing. And then you just do your normal thing. You just put the wheels on it like we've talked about before. The fun part is that the axles are such that, let me get this. Well, it's already all the way through. So you have to cut the axles in half so you can get them to get both axles in there and be able to pin them in place. So that's it. That's the truck, and that's the car. This is what I do to make it work.
Dan,
Yes, question.
when you're cutting off the axles of the car, how do you do that?
Okay, I'm going to talk about something that I hope will not offend you, and I apologize if it does. There is a tool that I used as an electrician, and it had a cutter here, and it had jaws at the top of it. Some people call it a side cutter. We called it dikes up north, and people up north, I come down here and says, "You got a pair of dikes?" What? I'd like a pair of dikes. Give me your dikes. You mean the side cutters? Just give me the side cutters and I'll be fine. And all I do is I just nip off about that much, and then put it in there.
Another option, I ran into the same problem. I
Yeah.
cars, and pins were too long. And I was trying to do it on the scroll saw, and that was hard to hold.
Oh, that's a pain. Yeah, that's
So what I did
dangerous.
is I took a piece of scrap wood that was the thickness that I wanted to keep,
Mm-hmm.
and I drilled a hole through it where the pin would go through.
Yeah.
And I just take that and run it along the side, and it held.
Oh, yeah.
And it worked really well and safe, a lot easier to do. Went a lot faster.
So basically, you want to do the demonstration next time? Is that what this is? Is that what this is? Huh?
Here's an alternative.
It just, yeah, yeah. I'm up here working. You realize that? I'm trying to get. I got stuff doing up here. Just. So anyway, there's a question over here. Give me just a half second. When I cut this with the side cutters or dikes or whatever you want to call them, it crushes the wood a little bit. All right, so when you cut them, it crushes the wood. So I do the thing, I turn it like this and I squeeze it with the end of the dikes and I round it back out again. Works like a charm. Yes, sir.
The tractor trailer in the center
Yes, sir.
looks like natural color. The one to your left has a tan color.
This.
How did you get that?
Well, this is back to where I used the tongue oil on this. This was oak and this is just white pine. But I used tongue oil on that. When I used that on my little bitty space, which I had so little of, I had to dip the wheels. I had a bucket that I put wheels in. I poured some tongue oil in there, and then pulled them out and strung them up on pieces of wire so they just drain a little bit. And then after about 20 minutes, I'd wipe them off, and so they came out looking pretty nice and pretty. But then in doing that, it made for a nice looking piece, but if I were going to do something to finish this, I'd probably put a color on it. The tongue oil just doesn't add color to it, and so if I was going to take that next step of trouble, then I would probably do or stain it or do something like that.
But the tongue oil is what made that tan color.
Well, it's tongue oil on the oak, yeah. The tongue oil on the oak itself. The oak is not that color. It just goes down that color with the tongue oil on it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
The thrust pin that connects the trailer to the cartridge, how long is that?
Oh, this is why you have notes.
So you can ignore it.
And it says right here, right before the slide that had the box of wheels in it and all that sort of stuff, it says Kingpin. It says it right there. And I happen to have one with me, oddly enough. And what you do is I like to take the top. Not that it makes a bit of difference, but I like to take the top and I like to put the Kingpin in there. And then it just,
Over to your right.
oh, sorry. Yeah. I put the kingpin in there, and that works just fine. Now, I'm going to do the entire installation because I have glue with me. I'm not proud. I can do this right in front of everybody.
How long is it?
I'm sorry?
How long is it?
About that long. It's a product of how deep you want to drill your holes is actually what it is. And depending on whether I've got my drill press set at a certain depth, then it'll be whatever I happen to drill that day, and then I'll go back and I'll say, oh, I need it to be this big. When I went to get this very kingpin, I went to my really nice scroll saw, and I had a dowel there, and I cut off, and I came back, and I put it in there, and that was just great. And then I put it together, and it looked about like that. And I said, well, okay, go back and I'll cut off some more. So I went back and cut off some more. And so it's not, nobody's going to worry about it if your truck kind of doesn't balance or things like that. It's handmade, and it's something that you're making for good kids. And now this is how much, well, I would put glue in there. This is how much glue I use. If I can get it to come out. Oh, it's not a lot. It's just.
Are you filling the hole?
No. The whole. See, I'm already all the way in there. There's no squeeze out or ooze out, and that's it. There we go. And that's the kingpin. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. And it says it right here, right here in my notes. Anybody else got questions, thoughts, comments? Rob?
Okay, on the woodpecker lift there.
Yeah.
Did you talk to a woodpecker, or do you talk to people at the store?
I talked to people at the store. The guy had the.
Woodpecker has a lifetime warranty. When there's something wrong with it, you send it to them, they'll send it back to you. It doesn't cost you a thing.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Yeah, he had said that they had to pay for something.
The store was telling them that. I said, no, it's not. Woodpecker makes 3 different brands, all
Yeah.
your major ones, and they're all major ones you didn't hear about until you find out they're all made in the same building.
Yeah.
But
Beck, I've taken too much time. I'm going to bow now. Thank you, guys.
Encore.
Yeah. I heard one encore. That's not.
So I don't think we've ever had anybody bow at the end of a presentation.
I don't know how not to do that.